Well, good morning. Welcome back. In case you're just joining us, you're watching Morning Express. It's a chilly morning. I hope you're warm wherever you're tuning in from. We're here to inform you about the latest developments. Just taking a look at what you can expect in today's dailies. As usual, I have with me the Daily Nation and Kenya's bold newspaper, The Standard. Perhaps let's interrogate what you can expect on the front page of The Standard before we get into the deliberations of the day. On the front page of The Standard, it's all to do with Speaker Muturi on Uhuru, Raila's secret pact. And you'll see it on your screens in a few. It's all to do with the retirement call. And in a candid interview, the National Assembly Speaker Justin Muturi, a close ally of the president actually, shares tidbits from his interactions with the head of state, who he reveals told him about the handshake and Raila's retirement from politics. There you have it on your screens right now on the front page of The Standard. That's a big story of the day, but also a lot happening on the front of the health sector. No COVID jab, forget government services next year. I think as of 21st of December, you won't be able to access government services. Equally, public transport will be an issue in case you haven't been fully vaccinated. That's according to MOH guidelines released just yesterday by the CES Mutahi Kagwe. And equally, no beer or travel without a COVID-19 certificate. More details on page 4, as you can see, and a lot more covered on the day's developments. Crossing over to the Daily Nation, they've gone big with the bitter feud in the judiciary. Maraga and the top lawyer, the Grand Mullah Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi, in an ugly court battle. And they're spilling the beans in a response to a defamation suit filed by retired Chief Justice David Maraga over a 220 million shilling bribe allegedly given to a Supreme Court judge. City lawyer Ahmed Nasir claims the retired Chief Justice has a history of soliciting favors. The senior counsel also questions Maraga's lifestyle and source of wealth. That's on the front page of the Daily Nation, but they equally touch on the latest political developments. Ruto mentioning he'll win the State House race in the first round, even as One Kenya Alliance says they are not in talks with the Deputy President in terms of forming an alliance. So much to talk about, so little time. So let's get right into it. I'm joined in studio by a panelist of the day, Michael Agwanda, political and governance expert. Thank you so much for your time and good morning. It's great to see you, Agwanda.
Good morning and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Asante for your time. Professor Mohamed Elmi equally joins us, governance expert. Good morning and karibu.
Good morning to you.
Okay, I think, gentlemen, let's start with the big story of the day. It might not be on the front page of the dailies, but Kenyans who haven't got their vaccination, the full vaccination jab, will definitely be barred from accessing key government functions. Talk about your KRA, talk about immigration, hospitals, and prison visitations, including port services, amongst others. Equally, it will be mandatory for drivers and matatu conductors, boda riders, pilots, going all the way to Kenyans working in the transport sector to show proof of full vaccination at all times. Agwanda, well, what's your take on this? Are we arm-twisting Kenyans into getting the COVID-19 vaccine, or this is the route that needs to be taken in order to get to that 10 million goal by the end of this year?
Good morning, viewers, and thank you, Jesse, for giving us the opportunity to discuss current matters. Most importantly is the one that you've just been looking at on the newspaper, but also that was announced by the CS for Health yesterday, Honorable Mutahi Kagwe. Jesse, let me start by saying this. I think we are, as a country, we are not looking at things in a more critical way, and more so matters of health. I remember when COVID came in 2020, there were a lot of confusion, and not just confusion, it was delegated to the police force to enforce a public health matter. And we know that a number of people were killed, allegedly killed by the policemen for not having masks or for just being out there. Some were arrested and bundled into the cells. Some were hoarded in more or less in a place where they will be contained until, possibly COVID will be over. But also, we also know that it became a police force, containment measure more than the public health measure. So it was completely mismanaged. When I see a situation where now vaccine came into the country, and after vaccine came into the country, people were looking for vaccines everywhere, and it was very difficult to find vaccines. And then you bring vaccines that are not enough because you're about 45 million people. The vaccines you have in the country is probably not even more than 15 million. And then you're giving about a month or 1.5 month ultimatum that everybody should have gotten vaccine by that time. That in itself is hogwash in my view, and that in itself is arm twisting Kenyans without giving them the opportunity and the places to take the vaccine. First of all, we know that the vaccines are not enough in the country. And so you cannot say that everybody that is going to seek for government services by 24th will have brought over 45 vaccines, 45 million vaccines in this country. I don't think we'll be able to do that by December 21st. So that in itself is a tall order. We cannot even meet it. Secondly, when you say that people need to take vaccine by 21st, and yet I have friends, like a friend of mine who is called Grace, that has been trying to look for vaccine, Johnson & Johnson, and she can't get it. Every place she goes to, either it is hidden or it's not given. Okay. Most of these facilities that are giving vaccines also have a time limit. They can only start from 9 up to probably about 1, and then after that they close. The vaccines are not within reach in the communities and in the villages. Even in the city centers, the vaccines have not been taken to churches, the vaccines have not been taken to nearest places, highly denselated places of residents, like it is happening in the first world country. The vaccine is not available to everybody. We know that Johnson & Johnson was hijacked by the corporate, and you could only find it within the bank institutions and the corporate organizations, but not everybody. Now, if you've not availed enough vaccine in the entire country and for people within reach for people, then how do you expect them to have gotten a vaccine within the next 1 month? That is just not possible. And again, when you say that they will not get the services, including education, that is the right of the people. You cannot take that away. I see a huge possibility of people running to court and saying, this is not tenable. And by the way, it is not backed by law. Because it's not backed by law, it is possible that people will go to court, and that is not be tenable at all. But I think Tai Kagwe need not to threaten Kenyans. We've come from a very hard time. 2021 and 2022 has not been a very easy time for Kenyans, especially people who are running restaurants, people are tourists in this country. We need more money for tourism in this country. We know people who've been running hotels have been running into billions of losses. In fact, most of them have closed their hotels. And for that reason, for you to come again and threaten the already an economy that want to grow, then you're telling people that you're not in the interest of growing the economy and in the interest of having people back to work. And I think he needs to be careful when he's addressing the nation, because we've come from a hard time and we don't want to go again to a hard time by a threat. I think taking a vaccine is, like everybody has a right. Some few people will not take the vaccine, whether you force them or not, while there are people who can be encouraged to take vaccine, but they need to have those vaccines within reach, which the government has not done.
Okay. Definitely, it seems to be high-handedness from the government in one way, but according to them, this review of measures is intended to accelerate the vaccination even as the infection rate goes down. Professor Elmi, perhaps borrowing from the past and also reacting to the same question, do you think this is a proper move going forward? But looking back, the previous vaccination drives we've had in the country, polio vaccination and the like, has there been a more intentional approach from the government in terms of getting the masses inoculated? What would you say? How would you compare the previous vaccination drives to this one?
Thank you. I think as an epidemiologist, I think the approach the government has taken is not right. Why? First, before you bring rules that are extremely draconian, then you must have put efficiency into the system, that the vaccines must be available and it must have proper coverage, and the certificates are also available, and this thing must cover the entire country. I can tell you for free, I have already gotten the 2 vaccines myself, but up to today I have not gotten the certificate. So this tells you that there is massive inefficiency within the system. The other thing is that this country has regional disparity, and this disparity is manifested in surface delivery. For example, Northeastern today is facing a very severe drought. The concern of the people out there is livelihood, much more than vaccine. So where will the priority of these people be? The other thing is that this vaccine is not available to a nomadic pastoralist. So if the minister says that you will not get birth certificate, your children will not go to school, you cannot go into a hotel, I think this is not well thought. It's not well thought. So public health programs must be driven by motivation, and this motivation must come from the public. And the motivation can only come from the public if there are right policies, if there is access, if there is affordability, and if the health worker systems, the health systems are very, very strong enough to deliver what the government policy wants. So currently, our health system is very fragile, particularly in areas where there are pastoral society. So this directive, I think, was not well thought, and there is an opportunity for review. The other thing is, as my friend has said, there is a legal component to it. You know, health is a right. It's a right. And this right cannot be limited by a directive from a CS. So I think, in essence, the policy, the intention is good. The intention is to increase coverage for our people, which of course is a very nice preventive method. But the methodology used to get this coverage is not the right one. It must be reviewed so that, and the time is essentially short, 1 month. And you see, January people are going people are going to school. They require birth certificates. There is a lot of traveling. There is a lot of movement within the system. So if you say you are going to be blocked because of you don't have a COVID certificate, and the certificates are not available, the vaccines are not available, then why are you punishing the people? Why are you punishing the people for things that you should have done yourself? So I think this policy needs to be reviewed, and it must be thought well, okay, so that we can increase coverage without necessarily bringing policies that are detrimental not only to the people, but even the ultimate desire of increasing coverage.
Prof, it's good that you brought up policies, and perhaps during the vaccination campaign that's set to start November 26th, I think as we go into the weekend, just this week, perhaps we'll see a better or a more aggressive vaccination drive from the Ministry of Health. But talking about the method, what exactly would you want to see during this vaccination, the mass vaccination campaign that sets to begin on November the 26th? Because we've just seen, we're taking a look at the international stories. Rwanda have actually taken the vaccination campaigns to buses, where people are actually boarding buses, bringing those services closer to the people. Is this something we can borrow, perhaps?
You see, this is not the first time that we have done a campaign. We have done measles campaign. We have done polio vaccination campaign. The government has done many campaigns. And the method to use is use the health workers. As you say, the Rwandans have not brought any draconian rules to facilitate the vaccination coverage. This thing can be achieved if the right policy and the right systems are used. If, for example, the polio vaccine is done house to house, and there are health workers, community health workers, government health workers, and there are special programs that are supported by donors, UNICEF, WHO, and I think if this method is used, then we can effectively increase our coverage without hurting the people, or bringing systems that are that will have an adverse effect. An adverse effect, because you see, if for example, where I come from Wajir County. Wajir County has massive land coverage. The people who live there are essentially pastoralists. So if there is no outreach services for those vaccines, then how are they going to get it? How are they going to get it? And it is the responsibility of the government to reach those fellows. So I think the methodology that is being used is it must be people-driven. It must be sympathetic to the situations that are already available here. And then we have already the immunization program and vaccines are KEPI. KEPI is a very essential tool, and they have used these kind of systems to reach coverages, to reach the desired target in terms of coverage. So I think what the Ministry of Health should do is to get its act right. Look for sufficient funding.
Okay.
Look for the people who know this job and how to do it, and then put into the system so that the coverage is increased. And this can be done very, very easily if we use the community strategy.
All right. That's a different approach. Perhaps, Agwanda, as you add your voice to that, we're getting closer and closer to the festive season. And perhaps during merrymaking, people usually overlook some of these guidelines that were handed over in terms of the directives and measures we're supposed to follow. Talk of social distancing and the likes. And when you think of this, then perhaps you see where the Ministry of Health is coming from, because other governments right now are looking for ways to reimpose strong restrictions during this festive season. What's your take on that?
First of all, let me address the issue of policy. You have three components to implement a policy. The first one is a policy itself. It needs to be designed. After designing, we need to go to the implementation part of it. And implementation part of it cannot be done without a strategy to implement that policy. And that strategy cannot come without resources. Those three areas must be addressed. The question is, if the government is bringing a policy as such that everybody should have been vaccinated at least by 21st, the question is, do they have the resources? The resources comes in terms of the vaccines that I was talking about. The resources comes in terms of monetary involvement in ensuring that the transport of all these vaccines are done. The temperature that is required is, it's preserved within the temperature that is required, that it's taken to the nearest, clinic, or it's taken to the nearest church, or it's taken to the nearest social hall, to the people. This will need resources. And as Professor said, you cannot do this without using community health workers today, because those are people that will knock at every door and say, in this area, and they will cluster them, and after clustering them, say, this area have been vaccinated, this area have not been vaccinated for this reason or this reason. This can be done, but Honorable Muturi Kagwe must tell us whether he has the money. Where is the budget for that? And has it been given to them? And who is being given this money? Because I think this is where the problem is. And Honorable Muturi Kagwe must also enlist the places where these vaccines are available and how long they can be found there. Honorable Muturi Kagwe must also tell Kenyans that they have enough vaccines. If he doesn't say that, then this policy is as good as hearsay. But I go into what you've just asked, Jesse, in regards to the festive seasons that we're going to in the next. Remember that this is the only Christmas that perhaps you're going to celebrate after 2 years. In 2020, there was no Christmas. Everybody was hauled into their homes, to their families. They were not traveling. There were curfews and a lot of other difficult challenges. People had lost their jobs. Now people have turned around and taken their kids to school, and hopefully on the 23rd, the schools are going to close. And then, boom, you have between 21st and maybe 1st of the year, of next year. I can tell you that keeping social distance is going to be really, really difficult. That's why I support the government in the area of ensuring that people need to go to vaccinate themselves as much as they can, because that reduces the level of contraction or the level of getting a COVID-19, which I think everybody needs to be observant of. But I also want to say that I think people need to be encouraged to continue using face masks. I think if you go to the villages and crowded areas, this is still being left out there. The campaign must continue, and it must continue devoid of coercion, devoid of being forced and being intimidated. People need to own it up. And examples every single day, instead of the press conference by the minister telling people how punitive this action is going to be, they need to be encouraged. The chiefs need to talk about this. The politicians need to talk about this. The aspirants need to be talking about this, so that everybody are told that be careful about this, as much as the figures are going down, but we also don't want to lose your gun, because if you do that, then we might just go back to where we were. It might not, because a number of people are being vaccinated, but I think it is important that we encourage people with public health. And I think for now, we need to turn over this announcement to public health experts. And we need to have USAID, we need to have AMREF, we need to have a number of these agencies taking over this and using some of the resources to make sure that every corner of this country, somebody knows about what they need to do and are encouraged to do it. When we talk about the mask, we need to know that people are getting fatigue of buying the mask. Yeah. And the question is, are there resources to make the mask even cheaper for children who are going to school? As we plan, I saw the Ministry of Education releasing about $4 billion to construct schools, classrooms in schools for junior high. I will be thinking that perhaps Ministry of Education also need to continue saying, look at the schools that perhaps may not be able, all the children may not be able to afford masks. Can we make sure that we still continue to supply this mask? In that way, it is encouraged from non-profit organizations, the private sector, as well as the government. But in this case, I am seeing the government only trying to fight COVID-19, and they've left the other partners out, which is not how you want to combat a pandemic.
Okay. Yeah, definitely multilateral efforts will be best placed in terms of combating the pandemic. But so much information in today's dailies on the government's shift of policy in terms of making it mandatory for Kenyans to have that coronavirus vaccination certificate in order to access in-person government services. Interestingly, teenagers who are above 15 years of age will also receive the Pfizer vaccine, and that comes as Kenya is expecting 4 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine, which will be administered to teenagers above 15 years of age. More details covered on today's dailies. But gentlemen, Professor, let's talk about devolution right now. The DevCon conference is set to be held just as from tomorrow in Makueni County, the 7th annual of its kind. And so far, pages 8 and 9 of the Standard sort of break down the hits and the misses of devolution even as we grow into it. It's a learning process. So perhaps looking back, and even as we expect a lot to happen in the next week during that DevCon conference, what say you about the hits and misses of devolution? Have we come of age to brag about the fruits of devolution actually getting to the intended recipients?
Thank you. I think devolution is one of the best things that has happened to this country after independence. Having said that, because the intention of devolution is essentially to bring resources to the people who deserve most, and that is at community level. There is massive development that has taken place within the counties, and the devolution in its structure has also brought governance. Governance, that we have elected a governor, we have elected, the senator who is supposed to be doing oversight authority. The county government has an assembly, MCAs. So this structure of devolution has actually worked. But the elephant in the house is that it has also devolved corruption. So some of the resources that are actually intended for development are been abused or rather misused by the said people. And the most unfortunate part of devolution is that there is massive impunity. If you read the auditor report of the last 10 years, you will be shocked. The amount of financial abuses, misappropriation, lack of following the procedures of the government. But in essence, devolution in its totality has brought massive development to the people of Kenya, and particularly to areas that were essentially marginalized. If you take Wajir County, for example, in the first 5 years of devolution, a lot of development has taken place. This is the first time that we have gotten a tarmac road. A lot of health facilities have been upgraded. Boreholes have been dug. Many good things have happened. But the next governance session, that is the other 5 years, then a lot of things have also gone haywire. Okay. The problem is if accountability and the transparency is not enhanced in devolution, then the intended development and the intended services for the people will not work. So I think the conference now, it is up to the governors, the MCAs, the Senate, and generally the government to tell the people of Kenya level of development where they have reached. They must tell us the strength that they have gotten, and then of course they must also address weaknesses that are within the devolution system. And in this way we can be able to learn and progress from their point. But I think the greatest weakness here today is how to deal with corruption and how to deal with impunity. These are things that have retarded the necessary progresses that was meant for devolution.
Definitely. Accountability, transparency, because it seems we just didn't devolve, functions from the national government, the corruption as well. But anyway, Gwanda, as we continue with this, one of the major challenges usually noted between the county governments and the national government, disbursement of funds, and the timely disbursement of funds especially, even as the BBI was pushing for more funds to the counties. Add your voice to this, because this is definitely an impasse that doesn't bring any good deeds, especially to the county workers, where we see them at times give strike notices since they haven't been paid. And the governors, when put to question, there's no money for them. But perhaps also speak in line with the theme. This year, it's all about climate action. And the arid counties are supposed to plant, I think, 2 million trees. The other counties, 1 million trees so far. Are we walking the talk?
Jesse, the devolution conference is perhaps one of those functions or occasions that counties look up to. First of all, the members of assembly look up to, county members of assembly look up to it, because when they go out there, they're sure that they will get allowances, and quite good allowances for that reason. So their pockets are well, jellied. The governors have mixed reaction. There are a number of them that have done literally nothing, and there are a number of them that have been really successful. And for that reason, you find few that are so enlightened to go there, and a number of them maybe don't want to go there because they know that their colleagues knows that they've been mediocre, they've been involved in corruption, and they've also been having no governance skill at all. And that in itself is a fear for a number of them. But we also have the father of devolution, who is Honorable Raila Molodinga, being given an opportunity to address devolution. Devolution is one pie that is one of the best pie this country has ever had since independence. And that was a plan at the point of independence, but it was put down by people who just wanted to marginalize other communities, for their own interests. Now, when you look at the governance in the counties, you'll realize that the different counties that have succeeded with devolution, like Makueni, Machakos, Nairobi has tried, and few others. But a majority of these counties and the governors have only been there for themselves and their cronies and not the counties that they serve. An example, a big example is Homa Bay County. If you go to Homa Bay today, you'll be wondering whether they've received close to 50 million plus in the last 10 years or not, because there is nothing to show for it, other than very new cars that the employees, including some of them that are at a very low cadre, are driving, and these chief officers, and some of them, being arrested with hundreds of millions in their accounts, while everybody knows, what they earn. But you see, in such a place, they will also tell you that, EACC can do nothing to us. DCI can do nothing to us because we have them in our pockets. And you can see that corruption is taking place. But EACC will come there and do some PR, and then after that, they leave, Homa Bay. And then after that, the county accounts will be burnt. Once they're burnt, then there's no evidence for that reason. While people are continuing to loot at the expense of Mwananchi and at the expense of the development of the county. I strongly believe that there are few checks and balances that need to be done. First of all, for the counties to grow and for the devolution to get to where it's supposed to be, we need to have a strong DCI. And when we are a strong and independent DCI, we also need to have some element of corruption at the EACC done away with, because that is what emboldening some of these officers, like the ones in Homa Bay, to continue looting money that belongs to the people of Homa Bay and other counties as well, because they know they will not be taken anywhere. We also need to have a very strong office of DPP, so that when they take these people to court, they are prosecuted and it's expedited, so that it doesn't take a very long time to prosecute this thing. To come to what you are asking in regards to money being taken to the counties, I think it is lack of planning in the county. It is possible that the central government can also have a situation where they don't have enough resources to take on time, but ultimately it will be taken. The question of when we get money and allocation, it's finished within the shortest time, and then we have empty account. Perhaps it's not a proper planning. We need to have serious financial planning and implementation within the counties. But I also want to say this. If we continue having these contractors working for the counties and they are not being paid on time, and then it goes to pending bills, then we are not developing. And the question is, you cannot advertise for contracts, you cannot advertise for supply if you do not have those resources. And that should be the bottom line. Now, if you have those resources and you advertise for contracts and supplies, and you ask consultants to come and do their work, and then the governors decide to use that money that was designated for that specific contract for something else, these men and women need to be arrested so that we reduce the pending bill in this country. It's hurting individuals, it's hurting businesses. Some people have died as a result of their properties being auctioned because they work for the county for years and years. And some of these counties are known for not paying contractors, but instead that money is being taken into the pockets of the chief officers, chief finance officers in some of these counties. This must be stopped, and I hope it will be addressed. And it cannot be addressed without central government coming in and saying, if a governor is found to be culpable, he needs to step aside. And I think that's what needs to be encouraged, so that they don't go to court and still say, oh, we're still holding into the office. We have governors that have been cited for various misconduct and financial mismanagement, but you still find them in the office. This must stop. We must have Chapter 6 be brought into life, so that if you are found to be culpable or misappropriating the properties and the finances of the county, you need to step aside so that the county can move without you as they do the investigation and even as the cases go on.
Okay, interesting. That's the state of devolution, some of the hits and definitely the misses, even as we mature in terms of dispensation of this all-important function. Devolution right there. The DEFCON conference set to start tomorrow in Makueni County. Will definitely keep you informed right here on KTN News about some of the key talking points. Remember, the theme this year, all centered on climate action, coming right after the meeting, COP26 meeting of world leaders in Glasgow, Scotland. We'll definitely keep you informed, but allow us to take a short break right now. When we come back, we'll shift focus to other pertaining issues. Remember, the big story of the day, when it comes to no COVID jab, you should forget government services. It seems to be a route taken by this government. Remember the Huduma number when it was being dispensed until the courts put a stop to it. Will we see a similar front coming to this? We'll be back with more on that. Equally, the latest political intrigues of the day. Stay with Morning Express.